Hey, welcome to episode 90 of the Brewgooders League of Beer and Comics. I'm Geoff. I think it'll just be me again this evening. Really proud of Colin's doing loads and loads of work for Commando, and I know he's got another set of really interesting and classified comic related things going on that I can't quite mention, but it also means he can't be here sometimes. And yeah, so I'll be running interviews and chatting about beer and comics and stuff this week. Hopefully Andrew will be swinging by. However, because we're in Scotland and restrictions are getting lifted here, he's in the shop as we speak, trying to get Kingdom Comics back into its amazing glory pre-COVID. So again, yeah, me running this scene. That's why there's no intro, because obviously when I get put in charge of something, I tend to ruin it, and I have left the main laptop that I do all the jiggery pokery technical stuff at work, and you didn't need to know that, but I thought I would tell you anyway. This week, I'm really I've been aware of this man's work for quite a while. He does a crazy amount of different things. I was reading his bio, and he's like a magician and stuff like that, as well as a writer. But I'm going to get him to talk about that stuff in a couple of months. He is the creative mind behind the Scientist comic, which is a sort of in keeping with, I thought, with it being sort of episode 90, it would be nice to kind of like wave goodbye to the A's of our episodes by having this 80s inspired comic, which we're all a fan of. So yeah, I thought I'll bring in Geoff Weber and we can have a wee chat, and yeah. Please feel free to say hi and all that sort of jazz in the comments. If you've got any questions for Geoff, that'd be also amazing. Here he is. Without further ado.
Hey, Geoff.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on. So, yeah, as I said before, I think last year when we started to put together the Brewgooders reviewing independent comics, you reached out with the Scientists. I think part 1 had just come out.
Okay, yeah.
At that point, and read it, was very intrigued by its sort of layout and some of this and the story, and yeah, I've been meaning to get you on for a wee while, and I don't know, lockdown happened, but then I put a message up, and you said, yeah, I'll come on. So I was like, yeah, let's do that. So why don't you do your elevator pitch and tell us who you are?
Well, I'm Geoff Weber. I am a comic creator, writer, and artist. As you mentioned in your intro, among other things, I also am a magician and a game designer. I have that's all stuff I sort of do on the side. My day job, I work in education as a I provide training to schools on technology, and I have a family. I got a wife, got 4 boys, I got 3 dogs, I got a cat, 2 birds, and my middle child just brought home a litter of kittens that he found abandoned in a shed. So now,
no way.
Now we have 5 like about 2-week-old kittens that we're bottle feeding around the clock.
That's absolutely nuts. So yeah, that's totally crazy, man. I was not expecting you to say anything like that. I just like the fact that you're the one of the only people I know that's also called Geoff with the Geoff spelling.
Yeah.
And it's also amazing you're also an educator, and you live with young boys like I do. Like you've got your kids are boys, and that's and they do weird things like bring home cats. So
yeah, we both have a 13-year-old.
Yeah, nuts, man, nuts. So yeah, I've got loads of questions for you. I don't know how you are for time, so we'll just fire through them. So you mentioned my first sort of coming across you was the Scientists, and the thing that always grabbed me about the site, and anyone needs to check it out. I have had it I remember looking at it and thinking the art style in particular is obviously the first thing that grabs you with most comic books. And I have heard that your work being referred to as sort of the diorama style.
Well, I used a diorama style for the covers.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something. I've been a fan of dioramas for a long time. On the old Nintendo magazines, Nintendo Power, back in the early 90s, I used to read those, and a lot of times they would make like a cover, sort of like they'd make a little diorama cover where they'd make like a little clay version of Mario and like the mushrooms and everything. They'd make like a whole little scene, and then they'd photograph it, and that'd be the cover. And I always thought that was a really cool idea for a cover, and I wanted to do something kind of like that for my comic. And when I was originally creating it, I didn't realize I was going to do it serialized over multiple years. I originally thought it was just going to be a original graphic novel. So I had a few different cover ideas. So I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to do that. But then when I learned about Kickstarter and I realized that I was going to be having to serialize it, suddenly I was going to need to have a bunch of covers for all these individual parts, because it was serialized over 4 parts before I put it as a graphic novel. So then I was like, oh, well, now I can do this diorama idea. So what I would actually do is I would draw or paint. Actually, I was using a paintbrush. I was painting all the characters, all the elements of the picture on paper. So it's still 2D, but then I would cut them out and like tape them to like a cardboard box and like create like a little scene, and I'd photograph it, and then I'd bring the photograph into the computer, and I'd add some, I'd use the Photoshop to erase any of the
wires and stuff,
the wires and the tape and the seams, to try to make it look a little bit more of an immersive scene. And then I used that as the cover. And I actually ended up making a diorama for all 4 issues and also for the hardcover release. So yeah, this is the. There you go.
I was gonna say they're so smart. Like it enters like a completely different dynamic to the scope. It's just really, really awesome. I love it. It's like it pops out. I'll share up more of these particular covers. Total grab me. There's definitely just that 3D. There's just a completely different dynamic, and the word is dynamic. It just there's you're viewing picture, like it's like live action comics. It's just really smart. It reminds me of something, and I can't quite work out what it is, and I've been thinking about it all day. But there was definitely a cartoon or a movie that used a very similar kind of style within its animation process. Mm-hmm. I still can't quite work out what it is yet, but in my head, it's just a really, really, really interesting it's just a really, really interesting way of doing it. Do you want to talk us a wee bit through the creative process and the story of the scientists?
Sure.
That's probably what most folk are going to know you from. Sure.
Yeah. So I'll give you the story. I'll give your audience the story pitch for the scientists. So it's a sort of young adult adventure of a group of kids in peril. They're a bunch of science fair winners that have been selected to enter this national contest. But the contest was actually just a front for this kidnapping plot. And they all find themselves kidnapped, and they awaken inside of this strange facility. They're not sure exactly where they are or what's happened to them. They're wearing like space suits or something, and
okay.
And it's just a big mystery, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And as they're trying to escape, they're encountering all kinds of like very serious dangers, like toxic gas in the air. There's like a killer robot that keeps coming after them. There's these, giant like human eating flytrap plants. So all kinds of dangers along the way as they're trying to figure out a way to escape from this facility that they found themselves in. And along the way, they're trying to figure out who it was that put them here. And there's clues that are revealed that indicate that maybe one of their group might have been in on it.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a mystery element too. So
where did the motivation come from? There is definitely, I know that the 80s and sort of this, the comic reads very much like a throwback to the sort of quite a lot of different aspects of 80s pop culture. I found, you know, there's quite a lot of contesting vibes. There's a Goonies aspect. There's the Goonies came to mind, but also some of the sort of darker movies of the 80s as well.
Yeah, I think anytime you have a group of kids on an adventure, the Goonies is sort of the prototype for that that type of story. So absolutely, Goonies was definitely on our minds when we were writing it. I think, it was definitely sort of the 80s adventure movie genre that was heavily influencing us along the way. And there's even some specific moments that you could even like find, oh, that moment is similar to this moment from this movie, or that moment is similar to that moment. So there's certain elements there, and more than just plot, it's also just sort of like the way the characters like banter with each other. There's a lot of humorous banter as they're going through. So it's sort of like the relationship between the characters has that kind of like 80s, you know, teen relationship type of vibe to it. So yeah, I can definitely say that was on our minds as we were creating it, for sure. It almost wasn't going to be a kids in peril movie at all, or I mean story at all. It was because when my friend Trent, who was my co-creator for this, when he originally pitched the idea to me, he originally, I think, had like more of like a sort of a James Bond type of thing in mind, where it was adult scientists that were had been kidnapped as part of some sort of like, you know, worldwide like you know, espionage plot.
Yeah.
And then I was the one who kind of like steered us more into like the, you know, doing it with kids and making it more of like a, you know, young adult adventure type of story.
So what was that creative process like then? Because those are massive, differences in that sort of thought. How did you find making it?
It was really just, he had a great talent for like taking the ball and running with it. Like, so like as soon as I suggested doing it with kids, he immediately latched onto that. He immediately understood what I was talking about, and he could just like churn out like, you know, like 20 pages like in a few hours. He was, wow. He was quite amazing at doing that. And the creative process for the writing portion of it was very much, we wanted to surprise each other, and we wanted to sort of have a little bit of not knowing, especially in an adventure type of story, not knowing how it was going to turn out, having these little cliffhanger moments. So because we were kind of tag teaming, I guess, on the writing, a lot of times we would write ourselves into a situation where we didn't know what was going to happen next, and it seemed like a impossible situation. And then we hand it to the other person, like, okay, you figure out what happens. So for example, there's a character who has asthma, and we established throughout the story, he's constantly taking hits on his inhaler, and then after they're put into the suits with the face mask, and we've established the air is toxic, and they've just been chased away by the robots. At the end of this chase, he starts having an asthma attack, and he pulls out a inhaler, and he realizes the face mask is in the way. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know how he's going to get to his inhaler without
deliberately writing each other into holes. That's amazing.
So you figure it out. So that was a bit of the creative process. We really one of the big influences, like the Goonies is kind of an obvious influence, but one of maybe the less obvious influences was sort of like that J.J. Abrams Lost, like the whole mysteries, creating these unresolved mysteries throughout the storyline. J.J. Abrams calls it the mystery box storytelling style, where like he creates a mystery, but then he doesn't resolve it, and it's not so much about like solving the mystery; it's more about like the feeling that the mystery creates. And
saying that though, do you feel like you managed to tie? Have you been able to tie up your mysteries so that people don't get annoyed? Because I get the mystery box theory, right? And I understand. Oh, it's amazing to like, but somebody that like my wife really loves doing jigsaws, and fair enough, there's the excitement of solving the puzzle, but if you get to the end and you're not satisfied because there's bits missing, or it doesn't all add up, or it doesn't all fit together.
Sticking the landing on a mystery box style of story where you're sort of making up the story as you're writing it is a challenge. It helps if you have sort of a vague idea of where you're going. Mm-hmm. But one of the big things with that style is that you don't plot out, you don't have an outline of this is how the story starts, this is the middle, this is the ending. You're kind of discovering the story as you write it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you can write yourself into a situation where you have too many loose ends, and like in the show Lost, I think a lot of people were unsatisfied just because they had too many balls in the air, and it was too hard for them to tie everything up neatly.
Yeah.
I think with the scientists, we didn't have so many elements up in the air that we weren't able to sort of bring them all back into it. So it's not really for me to say if we stuck the landing. I've gotten some feedback from some readers who thought that the ending was satisfying. So I will trust their feedback that we did what we were hoping to do. I've seen some shows that I think have done a phenomenal job, like Breaking Bad. I don't know if you watched that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But that's another one where they were sort of the same writing process. I read interviews where when they show the character buying the gun, and they didn't know necessarily how it was going to be used again later, but then they figured it out by the like the second to last episode or whatever. So
Breaking Bad. I think Breaking Bad's perfect. I read a really interesting article about programmings, and Breaking Bad. The Breaking Bad was used as an example of like, it was more kind of the idea of like they had the ending and they had the shots of the ending planned out, and they were able to backstep.
Mm-hmm.
When they were reflecting on Lost, it was more to do with the fact that it was almost like they got too. They had a vague idea where it was going, and then folks started to guess it because they thought their solution was cleverer than it possibly was, and then as a result, when folks started guessing it online, because it was the first program to really jump onto like the online discussion, debate, IMDb, Reddit hype train. Yeah. That they were like, oh no, folk are guessing what we were trying to do, and then tried their best to
outsmart their audience, maybe.
Yeah,
I think that might have been an element of it. I think part of the reason that maybe fans of Lost were disappointed was there was a little bit of a dishonesty to the way they were interacting with the fans, where they were making it up as they were going along, but they were pretending like they had everything figured out.
Yeah.
Oh, we know where this is going, so just buckle up and enjoy the ride. if they had maybe been like, we don't know either. We'll see. We'll all figure it out together. I think the fans might have been a little bit more, less more open to the idea of just like letting it unravel and letting the creators discover the story as the show went on.
Yeah, I think if they hadn't built if they hadn't like built the whole premise around it being so just killed by its own hype. I think that's it. Stuart saying that he loves a good jigsaw. Thanks for your input, Stuart. A 1,000 piece Alfred Hitchcock puzzle.
Nice.
With
my kids, I can't leave a puzzle lying around. The pieces will get eaten or something.
So I can't leave mine. I can't leave puzzles lying around here because my kids and my wife try and solve them, and you have like whole sections done that see you're like defeats the point of solving this puzzle if my family are doing it for me when I'm like at work and stuff. So
I kind of like the idea of like a puzzle where every time somebody walks by, they're like, "Oh, let me."
Yeah. So it's quite wholesome, isn't it? What's it? So what's next? What's next in the pipeline in terms of because the graphic novel is finished, isn't it? Have you?
Yeah, I wrapped that up in 2020, literally just before the whole pandemic thing broke open and everybody went into lockdown. I just wrapped up the Kickstarter for that graphic novel. So that's all printed and shipped off to all the backers. Bad luck for me that I got my book printed just before there's no more conventions to sell it at. But
tell me about it, man. Tell me about it. It does mean that if you're anything like me, because I've got a couple issues of my stuff, and you're sitting on it, and you're just like, last week we had the guys from In Symmetry. We had Matt on, and Steph on, and they were talking about how they're Matt's in Florida, and they're talking about how things are opening up kind of down there now, and they're building somewhat of a convention circuit now. With it, are things opening up in Virginia?
Things are starting to open up a little bit. I'm looking ahead to see what conventions are coming up, maybe in late summer or in the fall that I might consider going to. There's a few that I'm looking at. I got vaccinated, so I feel a little bit more comfortable with attending those kind of events than I did previously. The one that I was the most hopeful to attend is called the Small Press Expo, and that one unfortunately is not happening.
That gone?
That's good.
No.
That's gone for the year. So maybe next year. But
I've not heard of that one. So whereabouts is that one held? Is that
one takes place in Bethesda, Maryland, and that one is a very for the name Small Press Expo. It's actually a pretty large convention, but basically it's like the size of like a small mainstream convention, but it's like imagine a small mainstream convention that's like entirely artist alley.
Oh yeah, amazing. We have, I think, I've not been yet. I've got tickets to go this year, but I've not been before. So if there's anybody watching that can correct me, there's a convention in the UK called Thought Bubble, which I think is along the same lines. And then in the town I'm from, Dunfermline Comic Con, they focus a lot on the sort of the creator and the artist. So they'll have like high profile guests, but they tend to be only high profile within the comic industry. It's they're not going down the we'll bring in sort of celebs or guys from television or the video game industry.
Yeah.
So
SPX does have some pretty high profile guests. I think the last one I attended, they had the creator of Steven Universe was.
Oh, maybe, but that's all right. I think they did the same with I think they did the same in the UK with Glasgow. There's one called MCM, which is a big one in Glasgow, and I think they had the Steven Universe creation team there as well. But I think they get away with that because there's comics in that first Steven Universe, isn't there? My son reads them, so
yeah, there are definitely. So So that's where I'm at with the scientists. That wrapped up. So it took me quite a long time to make the scientists. I I was pretty much a team of one for the whole time, and uh, from from the time that we finished the writing until the time that I published it, it was about 15 years. So
Wow.
a good chunk of time. And I knew I've learned a lot about making comics since then. So I knew if I wanted to do another comic, I don't want to spend another 15 years to get it off the ground. So I needed to have some ways to get stuff out there faster. So I was looking at bringing on collaborators or doing smaller scale projects. So, and I actually ended up doing both. So, so what's next for me? I have a short story coming out in an anthology comic called Not So Fair Tales, which is an anthology of like these sort of fractured fairy tales. Fairy tales with like a modern twist or some kind of unexpected taken from like an unexpected angle, sort of in the style of the fractured fairy tale from the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And
that's a bit of a throwback.
And that's launching at the very end of this month.
Cool. Is that going to be is that going to be Kickstarted or?
Yeah, that'll be on Kickstarter. That's notsofairtales.com is the website for that. And
awesome.
Myself and a bunch of other really great creators have stories. My story is going to be based on the Emperor's New Clothes story.
Wow, awesome.
If you're familiar with that, and and the story, my take on it is called The Emperor's New Battle Mech.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think you need to say more. That's real cool.
So everybody laughs at him when he goes on the parade wearing his invisible clothes. So he commissions an invisible battle mech to get revenge.
Amazing. That sounds cool. That's really cool. I like the Emperor's New Clothes. I became more aware of it recently. I was sort of, I knew it, and then I was watching something with Greta Thunberg. You know, the young lady who's doing the who's behind sort of the Extinction Rebellion stuff and the protests, and she talked about it in a recent documentary about how she envisioned how she saw a lot of parallel between her and the Emperor and the Emperor's New Clothes, and I thought that's a really interesting perspective on what you're doing. So I reread it just to see like what was she talking about. That's cool. That's really smart.
Thank you. So I think that book's going to be a lot of fun when that one comes out. Julie's talking about Thought Bubble.
Yeah, Julie's saying Thought Bubble is very creator focused. It's amazing. I thought so, but I've never been. As I say, I'm going with Colin this year, and I'm really excited. We booked our hotel on Monday, so it's in the UK, Harrogate, so in England. So
in England, okay.
I'm trying to think who they've got. They've got Scott Snyder, I think, is one of the main guests this year of Justice League, and loads of other things, obviously. And John Tynan is going to be there as well. Again, of like, you know, they're both very influential in DC at the moment. So, and I think. No, it's not. I remember in the conversation, I was in the pub with Colin on Monday, and we were trying to remember because there's another convention nearby, Thought Bubble, that's going to have Dave McKean, who did a lot of the illustrations for Sandman, and Neil Gaiman stories, and so quite lucky. I think the British comic scene, like everywhere else in the world, if like the scene's quite strong here. I imagine it's quite strong in the northeast of the US as well. So,
oh yeah, I mean British comics have like a different sensibility. I was I got into collecting like back in the early '90s, and I quickly gravitated towards like Judge Dredd and a lot of British titles, just because I don't know, it just appealed to me a lot more than some of the early image stuff at the time. I thought was what caught my eye because of like the flashy thing, but there was just no substance to it.
I think sorry, I'm trying to get Julie saying. Julie says that if you're going to places like Thoughtful, we have to take a lot of money. I've been a subscriber to 2000 AD again, like on and off my whole life actually. But I've been back on for just over a year, and it definitely just packs a different vibe, and the substance is often there, and it's quite bizarre. You know, you'll get a story, you'll get a Judge Dredd 4-parter that's quite like tongue in cheek and a bit silly. We had Dan Cornwell on a couple of months ago, who had drawn a story that was all about a psychic who could see people. He couldn't see people's clothes. Actually, everyone's clothes. He couldn't see people's new clothes. And then the punchline of the story was that he could see underneath Judge Dredd's clothes, and he was like, "Don't worry, Jared, your secret's safe with me." Was kind of the punchline, and so they're playing around with like really silly, it's quite almost toilety humory kind of stories, and then in the very next strip they'll have like a really graphic, really morally ambiguous slaying, you know. So it's like an amazing comic.
What I always liked about those Judge Dredd was just like how a lot of the stories kind of like focused on like the lives and like drudgery of living in like a city, being unemployed and bored and getting caught up in all the latest fads, that kind of thing. And I always thought that there's been a couple Judge Dredd movies, and I always thought that trying to make it like into an action movie was kind of like a mistake. I always thought that they should like make it more of like an anthology movie, like a Tales from the Crypt kind of movie, where like Judge Dredd is like the Crypt Keeper. He's like the linking up between all these little stories of like telling like little smaller stories of people that live in this like futuristic city.
I think that's what it's not the I don't know where it's at, because I think it's been in and out of production and pre-production for months. But is that not what Amazon were going to be doing a Mega City series, and that was kind of what they were going to go with? I think exactly what you described. I thought Dredd was okay. The first Judge Dredd movie with Sylvester Stallone's woeful actually, but I like the second. I like the Dredd one with Kurt Urban, but I think what they missed, I don't know. And we talked about it. I suppose you could just go and watch RoboCop, but you know when you're watching RoboCop and they've got all the weird like adverts in there as well, and the sort of satirical, like advertisements and news stories and stuff like that. I think if Dredd had maybe had a wee bit of that in it, it would have been pretty cool.
There was some Asian martial arts movie that I think the second Dredd movie was kind of following the model of. I can't remember the name of it, but
The Raid, was it The Raid?
Raid, that's it. The Raid.
Yeah.
So like I heard a lot of comparisons that it was just sort of like a sci-fi version of The Raid. So
and that was okay. It became quite quickly apparent that they'd considering Mega City's supposed to be absolutely insane. The majority of the Dredd movie took place in the same 3 or 4 redressed corridors, and obviously that was a budgetary thing. Sure. I think, you know, in that, yeah. But I like Dredd, but yeah, it's almost like they were making an action film and went, we can make this a Judge Dredd movie if we just put the helmet on him and make him say things that are kind of Judge Dreddy.
You could have put in a lot of different characters in that, and the movie would still be the same movie. So.
Totally, absolutely, totally agree. What was I going to say? I'm quite interested. You said you have written games as well, haven't you? A games writer.
Yeah, before I was making comics, I was working for a tabletop game company called Skirmisher Games, and they published like role-playing game books and materials, like Dungeons and Dragons and other systems. So I was doing illustrations for their books. And I also was interested in like just game design as just a topic in general. And I've de- I've designed a few like card games and board games over the years. I haven't published them yet, but um, I have a couple of games that if I ever find a break in my comic making, squeeze it in. I have a board game that I would like to publish at some point, which is sort of a strategy game using sand timers. So it's played in real time.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
almost imagine checkers, like a checkers type of game, but without turns. Everything's governed by sand timers.
That sounds amazing. You should totally do that because, like, what was it? I wrote a game about 9 years ago, and I started putting together. I don't know, because I was like younger at that point and hadn't quite worked out how to sort these things. I started a Kickstarter on it. Like I started putting together a Kickstarter campaign for a game that had like all I'd really done is managed to get a couple of miniatures put together for it,
Mm-hmm.
and like and a sort of very crass a very crass prototype game board and stuff like that. And it was essentially just, I don't know, a bit like I don't know, the idea, it was my friends called it like orc golf, but the idea was that like um I had a total like name and all that sort of stuff and branding and that for it, and I thought it was really smart. But because I use Kickstarter for my comics, every time I go log into Kickstarter and click, so like if I log into Kickstarter to see how like my current campaign's doing, for example, and I go down and I see it, like I can see this at the bottom amongst all the other campaigns I've done. Right at the bottom, there's this golf game that's just sitting there, and I'm like, every time I'm like I told the visual representation of regret. It's just there every time.
I did make a playable prototype of it, and I dragged it out. There's a club near where I live called Break My Game, and they meet they meet. Well, now they do it virtually, but they used to meet in person every month, and people would bring out their games in development, and they'd try them out and see, and people would give feedback and stuff like that. And I got a lot of great feedback on that. People were giving me like one of the biggest challenges with my game was people being able to play it without knocking the sand timers over while they're for their other piece. So I came up with some ways that we could make that a little bit more stable, and so it's like you get a lot of good feedback doing that. But
totally. That's really smart. I wish we had something like that here. I imagine we do. The closest I came to it was one of my friends, Gavin. He used to get sent. I don't know if he still does, but I think he stopped last year. But Games Workshop (GW) they used to send him codexes,
okay,
and have him and then have him try and break them, which was always really smart. Some of the stuff that I always thought that was that's really cool. And then some of the stories he came up with where he would just like be like, "Oh, that was broken," or like, there's a couple. If you can get him drunk and you pull out you'll pull out like a Space Wolf book, like the PDF of the Space Wolf Codex from Warhammer 40,000. Be like, that rule used to be this, but I fixed it, and you're like, that's just really smart, man. Well done.
Yeah. The playtesting is like such an important step of that whole process. I was also very interested for a little while. I mean, I guess I still am interested in coding and video game making. There was a period of time where I was trying to teach myself how to program in assembly so that I could make like an Atari game, because I'm a big Atari game fan. I like that very like old school aesthetic. And I got some books on that, but it was just a little bit too high concept for me to wrap my head around. But then I found some of these a little bit some more user friendly ways to do it. There's like a programming like a visual programming system called Scratch that I got into making games on, and there's another one called Make Code. So I've actually made a bunch of games on Scratch and Make Code. One of the games that I'd been like trying to that I'd had in my head for a long time was called Wizard Gladiator. So I made that in Scratch, and it's just
well, I've got kids. I've got kids at the school I teach in that use Scratch as part of their as part of like the software unit of a computing course, and yeah, it's really smart. It's nice. It's nice that other folk use it because, it's really smart. So what stopped you? Is there plans for like some sort of comic, video game hybrids?
I've been looking into doing some sort of comic tie-ins now that I have a little bit of a foundation in doing these kind of things. One of my friends, his name is Ryan Kroboth. He makes a comic called Sunmaker. So I was like gonna try to make a game for his comic as like a tie-in that he could maybe use to like as like a promotional thing for his game, like a little simple like platforming game where you control the character and you jump around and shoot fireballs to kill the enemies, that kind of thing.
That's cool. I think stuff like that's amazing. I really liked when we had the Symmetry guys. Obviously, I've interviewed loads of folk with loads of different kind of spin-offs. Matt, who's the writer for Symmetry, is also in a metal band. So a lot of his music inspires his comics and vice versa. And in some of their more recent pieces, they've done the thing where he's as part of the Kickstarter for the new comics, he's released like an album and said like, this character's backstory can be explored in track 1 of the album and stuff. It's really smart. I
actually really like having music that can go along with comics. For the first two Kickstarters for the scientists, I actually had a music album that went along with it. So it was synthwave music. So
I love synthwave, man. It's that 80s thing again, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I was trying to lean into the whole 80s vibe. There's 2 albums right now. There's the Science of Synthwave, Volume 1 and 2, that were for my first 2 scientists Kickstarters.
What does your wife say about all this? Because that's I sometimes like when I tell my wife my comic arc or that I'm going to do this for an upcoming Kickstarter or that, she's just like, I don't understand, but okay.
I think my wife probably has a similar view. I think she understands. She recognizes that it's important to me, so she's happy for me. That she's happy that I'm happy.
Yeah. So I think that's amazing. I think that's the way it needs to be. So you've got your short story coming out this year. Do you have anything else coming up? Any big? Is there going to be sequels to The Scientist, or have you got anything else in the pipeline that you?
Yeah, the Scientist was sort of a self-contained. It's fully wrapped up, but for what comes next, I kept looking into the anthology thing because I really like the idea of doing short stories. I can crank out a short story in maybe a couple months, depending on how many pages it is. So I have a short story that I'm doing, and it's going to be part of an anthology that I'm the organizer of called Stupid Kids, and this one is going to be autobiographical stories of childhood stories where things have gone bad.
I think we can all do it. It's interesting you're talking about growing up in the 80s and the 80s vibe as well. I finished watching a documentary called Class Action Park, which my geography doesn't. My geography fails me, but I know that you're kind of in the northeast.
Yeah.
If memory serves, Class Action Park was in New Jersey, which Class Action Park is in New Jersey. Yeah.
Yeah,
the documentaries about this water park that was action park. It was called Class Action Park because so many folks sued it
sure.
For criminal injuries and stuff like that. But there's one of the guys that talks about it being like that 80s, that childhood that I think possibly our generations were like the last group of last sort of generations of kids that could spend summers, leaving the house at 9 a.m. and not coming back to 6 p.m. and that being recognised as all right.
Yeah.
Whereas
parents didn't have so much of a tight reign over their kids because they hadn't been scared by all these real crime shows that are coming out every night talking about what's going to happen to your kids when you're not watching and all that. So it was I think we were maybe a little more free to get ourselves into trouble.
Which I think we did. Like I think we did. Like and I think about this sometimes where you're like, yeah, like some of the stuff, we're like, oh, it used to be all right. I see a lot of stuff on social media where like it's totally fine. Like you should be able to just like you could go out your front door. Your parents told you to be back before dark and that, and it was like, and that's how it should be. And it's like, but I remember quite a lot of crap things happening when I was wee. When I was young, like things happened, but you just kind of like you just didn't tell your parents and hoped that they never found out off somebody else, and that was it. It wasn't that like bad things didn't happen. It was just that we there wasn't social media to like have them displayed everywhere. So
yeah, well, the one caveat is for this book, the stories are supposed to be fun, so everybody who gets into any trouble in these stories is going to survive. So that.
Really?
That's the one caveat for this book. So the story that I'm working on for it right now involves an incident from my childhood where I was really into slime as a child. It was a fun toy that you could buy in vending machines, and it came with like your He-Man figures or your Ghostbusters toys. And it was all over Nickelodeon. Slime was really popular back then, and I had a kit called the Mad Scientist's Monster Lab, where it was all themed around like bringing your monsters to life. And I think I might have watched like the Frankenstein movie recently, so like I knew about like, oh, he uses electricity to bring his monsters to life. So I don't remember how old I was, but I took a metal coat hanger, straightened it out, and I had taken a blob of the slime and formed it over the coat hanger, and then I jammed both ends into an electric outlet.
Yeah, that wasn't amazing, was it?
So that's the story that I'm working on for Stupid Kids right now. I think that's a pretty stupid kid story.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting where that sort of even just the stupid kids aspect, because that the connotations of kids being stupid can get twisted and turned into loads of different directions. It must be quite interesting. It'll be interesting to see all the different stories that come out of that process, because that's quite
yeah.
I can imagine that could be a bit wild.
I got a lot of very interesting story pitches that were sent to me when I was posting this and inviting creators to come on board. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people create. I think it'll be a fun book. I really wanted to make like a book that I personally would enjoy reading. So that was one of the driving forces behind doing something like this. I do a lot of, fantasy and sci-fi and fiction, but, I also like to read stuff that's like sort of like slice of life type of stories. So if I enjoy reading it, I'm sure that other people might. There's another that too, and I haven't seen a whole lot of comics that cover this type of story before.
it's just a yeah. I think you're totally right, and it's probably to go kind of full circle. It taps back into that kind of that like the silliness and the nostalgia and that sort of rose tinted view we have on our childhood and stuff like that. There's that. I think that's going to be a massive part of it. That's probably why it's going to be so enjoyable because we the amount of stories you'll get from different people. Like, do you remember that time we did that? It's just like when you're in the pub, when you sit in a bar and you're chatting to your friends, and they're like, it's. I think you're drawn into that kind of mentality, and I imagine most people reading Stupid Kids will read it and be like, "Oh, we totally did that," or "That was totally us."
Yeah, I think I'm also just like a very sort of nostalgic kind of person. I enjoy looking back. I enjoy, reliving certain moments from my childhood. That's one of the reasons why I got into like collecting some of the old video games that I grew up playing. My old Nintendo games, the old Atari games. I have a little collection of that stuff now. It's just not everybody. Some people are just fine to just move on and forget. For me, I don't know. It just I enjoy sort of sitting in that moment where remembering maybe a simpler time.
Have you relived any that you're like, oh, that wasn't as good? Like you said about old computer games. This Christmas I bought a laptop that had built that basically a really rubbish old laptop, but the guy that I bought it from had stuck on an emulator that lets you play all the Atari games, all the Amiga games, and the old Nintendos, all the way up to the PlayStation 1, and like some N64 stuff there as well. But so yeah, Spyro the Dragon is still amazing, but and so is Crash Bandicoot, and like all the Sonic games and Mario games and that, they're all timeless. But like Altered Beast isn't as good as I remember it. Altered Beast was like my life for about a year. But then like things like Streets of Rage is probably the best game ever made.
Yeah, it's funny how when that's all you got, you only have a handful of games. You really have to make it work. You got to make yourself enjoy it and convince yourself, oh, this is fun. And now that's not really a situation I think kids these days have. They don't have no kid these days is like wanting for lack of options for entertainment. They have almost infinite options, so it's more competing for their attention. Whereas for us, growing up, we had a handful of games, so we, even if it was like a frustrating game, very poorly made, we'd force ourselves to play it because what else are we gonna do?
Totally.
Same with television. You watch the show because that's what's on.
Yeah.
Because it's 4 o'clock, and that's your choice. It's that or go outside.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting. It's great. Like, and I love to reflect on those sort of days, and that's the simplicity of it. It'll be interesting to see what our children, when they have their nostalgic view of now, reflect on. Oh, in our day we only had Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus. We didn't have any of these. But it's kind of. YouTube was just a channel.
Exactly. So,
yeah, it's been really awesome. Well, I noticed you were drinking a beer, which is a European beer.
It's a Belgian Stella Artois.
I'm really surprised to see that. Is that readily available in the US or?
Yeah, it is. There's a few different import beers that are pretty common in the grocery stores, so this is one of them. And I don't drink too often, but for the brew gooders, I figured I better grab a beer so I can have a beer and talk some comics. And I figure since I don't have I don't have a beer so often. I'm not just going to get a Budweiser or a Coors or something. I guess I'll splurge and go for the imported beer.
That's funny that that's considered imported beer. I love it. And Stella's like Stella amongst like in supermarkets in Scotland. Stella is like kind of premium amongst the lagers and the beers, but we certainly don't regard it as an imported one. I was going to open a beer on air, but then I've started homebrewing. So I've got this. It's a Belgian. It's a Belgian wheat beer that I'm going to open, but I'm going to wait till I go off the air and maybe add the review on next week, because I opened one just before you and me started speaking, and I put too much sugar in it, so it fizzes up like the CO2 release when I opened it. And actually, I had one bottle. I was out in my garden on Sunday, enjoying time with the family. I went in, and my hallway, which is where I keep my beer, was flooded with beers. The floor was soaking, and what happened was I actually I brew and then I fill the bottle and I cap them. And actually, the bottom of it was a bottle very similar to this one, but the actual bottom of the bottle had exploded. So like all the beer had come out the bottom end, which I'd never seen before. Normally when homebrew explodes, it comes out of the cap.
Yeah, you'd think that the cap would be the weaker part of the bottle.
Yeah, exactly that. I couldn't quite believe it. I was like, I actually thought that. I was like, one of the caps has gone in my bottles, and then I found it looked like that. That scene in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when they puts the TGRI thing together. It looked like that. I was like, that's insane. Yeah. Is there any plugs or anybody you want to blather or anybody you want to say hi to or chat or big up before we call it quits?
There's one more project that I got in the works I haven't mentioned. I started another sci-fi comic called Bug Hunt. That's my first time working as more of like the writer, and I'm working with like an outside artist on that one. So,
amazing. Who's your artist?
His name is Joe Wong, and he's actually a really amazing artist, and he can actually draw faster than I can write, which is quite an interesting situation. So I don't think we're going to be in another 15-year development cycle like I was with the scientists. I think this one will probably be ready by the middle of summer. I'll be coming out with the first issue of Bug Hunt. Sort of, it's going to be more of a comedic sci-fi adventure story about like a blue collar space exterminator who mistakenly ends up on a space station that's under attack by an army of robotic spiders.
That sounds nuts and incredible, and yeah, that sounds great. Middle of the summer, you said you reckon that'll be out?
Yeah, I think so. We're about halfway through. We have art for about the first half of the issue so far, and like I said, he's able to draw it faster than I can write it, so I can. I don't have any doubt that it'll be done in time for that.
That's amazing. Is he coloring it as well, or is that coming to you?
I'm coloring it, so this is my first time trying my hand at. Well, I colored the comic for the anthology, but this is my first time like really trying to delve into it. So I'm figuring.
How are you finding that process? Do you enjoy it, or?
I do enjoy it. There are some aspects that I found a little bit more tedious. There's an element of coloring called flatting that I didn't love so much, so I outsourced that. So I quite. It's funny because I quite like flatting. I find when you have to start zooming into sections and I find flatting quite satisfying because it can just get done quite. There's something that I don't know what they're talking about. I quite like flatting.
I find with some of the other aspects of colouring, you can spend ages on something, and you almost like you focus in on that section because it's quite important, obviously, to get it right. And then you take a lean back and you look at it and you're like, oh man, I've just spent like 2 hours on a corner of a panel. It's like,
yeah, well, the coloring is where you really make more of like the decisions and take into account like the lighting and the mood that you're going to create. The flatting is more just like the technical process of making sure that all the spaces are filled to the
there's no white bits. Yeah. Totally. It's good. It'd be exciting to see what you come back out with, man. Since we got a busy year, and then by hopefully this time next year when Comic Cons will be back up and running properly, you'll have a table full of stuff between Bug Hunt and the scientists and Stupid Kids. Yeah, that's quite exciting.
I'll have quite a few products to fill a table with, so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Cool. We're looking forward to it too, man. We need to get back on later on in the year when some of these projects are coming to fruition, and when you've got a Kickstarter on, it'll be good to get you on as well and drum up interest and chat about some of the, particularly like Stupid Kids with the different creators and things. It'll be nice to just chat to different people involved in that process, including yourself. So
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I want before we go, big shout out to Neil, who is a weekly listener. Neil always participates in the show, which is great. He always gives me stuff to talk about. He is on the Guinness. That's just a very kind of Scottish way of explaining your alcohol habit, to be honest as well. I don't know if this is something this is a way of explaining drinking in the US. But I'm on the Guinness means I'm drinking Guinness. But yeah, I think you get Guinness over in the US. Do you have Guinness in the US? You do, yeah. It's like a stout.
Yeah, it's hydrogenated. I know all about Guinness.
Oh, that's amazing. It's good stuff. Like it's the we have the kind of running joke over here that if because we obviously we do the whole craft beer thing here. But if you go to a pub and they don't have a decent craft beer, you just go with Guinness.
Oh, yeah.
So that's cool. I love speaking to when we have guys from across the Atlantic and ask them, do you get Tennent's? Do you get Guinness? Do you get Stella? Because it's interesting to see what you guys get. We get obviously we get Bud and we get Bud Light, and we get we also get, what else do we get over here that's, I think, US in origin? What's that?
Sam Adams?
Oh, we get no, we don't get Sam Adams, actually. We get Coors. Okay. And I think Blue Moon. Is Blue Moon from the US as well? Yeah. I've seen the Sam Adams. I've never had one.
Sam Adams is a decent beer.
Yeah. And I also I do notice we don't get that one. I suppose you watch Cobra Kai.
Oh yeah.
The beer that he drinks, we don't get it. Is it? What's the joke there then? What's the joke with that beer? Is it that it's not very good? He's picking it, or?
I think for a mass-produced beer, I think it's pretty good. I mean, I think if you get into like the Coors Lights or the Bud Lights, those just taste like slightly off water. But
totally.
If you're drinking the original Budweiser or the original Coors Banquet, I think those are a pretty decent tasting mainstream beer. I mean, it's not going to have like the richness or the complexity of like a craft beer, but if you're somebody like me with like an unrefined palate, then it's fine.
Fair enough, man. I generally want to just drink Coors Banquet because Johnny drinks it, and I'm like, I want to see what, because obviously they make such a fuss about opening the fridge and going past everything to like the last case of that. So that's amazing. Thanks again, man. It's been absolutely amazing. I would normally, with my empty beer glass, say cheers, but I don't want to shake this too hard in case it explodes in my hand. Thank you so much for joining us. And next week we've got Alex Luca is going to join us, but not live. I'm going to try and do some pre-recording with him. But so if you've got any questions for Alex, please drop me a message beforehand. Check him out, Dragon Whisperer and stuff like that. And please, again, check out Geoff's stuff. The Scientist is great.
Scientist, you can find that at scientistscomic.com.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking issue 1's there?
You can get the whole graphic novel.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, please jump on that, guys. And yeah, thanks so much, James. Thanks so much, Geoff. I called you James there as if like I forgot your name. That's the weirdest thing I've ever done. Cheers.
Have a good one.